You know, say what you want about it, but Himouto Umaru Chan was a pretty hilarious show. I feel like this show got a lot of unnecessary hatred, but I found it incredibly enjoyable. It was silly, it was relatable, and overall it was charming. We can always use more decent comedy anime, especially ones that are relatable and not just your typical high school stuff. So, in addition to collecting a couple of things from the show, I have something pretty valuable and pretty awesome. This is the Nendoroid 524 Umaru from Himouto Umaru Chan. And of course, in addition to that, we have the face swap Himouto Umaru Chan kit. Sometime after they released the Nendoroid, they released an additional 6 faces to customize this figure even more. Now, I've always rather liked this figure because I feel like this was the best way that they could have done the Umaru Chan character. And thus, I think this form factor is the best way to capture all of that character. Now, I've had this for quite some time, and I never opened the face kit, but I have opened the figure before, so we're going to be retreading some old ground here. The box for the face swap is pretty simple. It's just the typical picture of the character with one of the faces, all of the smaller versions of the other faces, and of course each face up top in its own bubble. The sides are similarly branded and do have some additional images, but nothing really better than the front. This part actually is a great little representation of everything in a smaller form. And of course the back is just a bunch of legal text. Funny enough, this is kind of like a store display. You can see there's actually some perforation in the cardboard here because you could actually punch that, flip it up, and turn this into a marketable kind of thing that you could put on a counter and just sell each face individually. But that's not what we're gonna do here. I think when I put her back in the box, she was not supposed to be wearing that face, so that's kind of hilarious that she is wearing that one. Still, the box is great. It's very clean and simple. The white, the pink, it all pops very well, and of course it contrasts well with the bright orange of the hamster cloak that she wears. She looks very happy here on the front, and we can see everything in that nice window display, which is wonderful. The side shows her playing a PSP looking video game, as well as her back, which is just a plain orange slab. The other side shows her very happily standing, and additionally laying on her back and crying like a baby, surrounded by many snacks. The back is a great display of simply 3 poses here, and it shows her with 3 different faces, as well as holding her accessories in a couple different ways. The top shows her brandishing a bottle of cola rather excitedly, surrounded by some snacks as well. And hilariously enough, the bottom has a different image of her with her arms crossed, standing rather smugly. But let's dig in, shall we? There's quite a bit in there. She also comes with this whole pack of additional arms, as well as a couple hands. And of course, the main figure, as well as all the additional accessories that you'll want, are packaged here in this plastic piece. There's quite a bit when you really consider it. A lot more than many of the newer Nendoroids. Maybe this one's held its value so well because of that. So here is the actual figure itself, and I've got to say, I'm actually pretty impressed with this one. For a figure that came out in 2016, this is damn nice compared to some of the newer Nendoroids that just don't really cut it. Obviously enough, she's pretty much all one big piece because of the hamster cloak, and of course that just becomes one big slate. And I don't like that there's a big fracture in it, but that's just so that you can take it apart and actually remove her face plates. Now, back in the day, this figure was only $40-something, I believe. Back when I first got it, I reserved it on AmiAmi and got it as soon as it came out. And for that kind of price, that's amazing because it comes with so many accessories. Some of the newer figures that come with hardly any accessories are sometimes about a quarter more than what I spent on this, which is pretty disgusting. That's all credit to this figure, and the fact that now you would have to pay something like maybe $60, $70 for it. I found one on AmiAmi that was pre-owned for a pretty cheap price, but trying to find one on eBay is pretty difficult, especially because there's so many fakes of this figure, so be very careful if you do happen to get it. They did a re-release of this figure sometime later, but this is the original from the line that was released in 2016. February of 2016, so very early in that year, so this is a pretty old figure. There is a little hole in the back where you can plug the Nendoroid stand, but other than that, the only way to access her posability is through her neck, which is a ball peg joint, which of course can go up and down on the pivot, as well as be spun either way because of the swivel it has. Both arms are on peg joints just as they usually are, and those go up and down as you need them to. But obviously enough, the collar of this hood only allows it to go up that much. Her hands are of course on peg joints as well, which means they can be spun and of course removed for some of her other hands. Her legs are both on little ball joints, which is nice because they can rotate around and do what you need them to do. But additionally, they can be unplugged for another piece I will show you in a moment. Overall, it's a Nendoroid, so I don't expect crazy posability, and this figure does capture the likeness of Umaru better than anything else would have. You wouldn't have been able to make a Figma of her because, look at her, she's just a weird little goblin. So this form factor is perfect, and that price point is even better. They could have made a Figma of her in her regular form when she's just like a pretty high school girl, but that's not the one we like. We like this weird little hamster creature. But now that we've looked at Umaru herself, let's take a look at some of the accessories she comes with, because like I said, there's quite a few here. Most of it consists of faces, and additionally, snack food. So, let's begin with faces. As I said earlier, you can of course crack open her cowl, which will allow you to remove her hair, and then you can remove the faceplate. This is pretty much par for the course with any of the Goodsmile figures. They usually always have the ability to remove faces, which I love about these figures. Now, out of the box, she comes with this rather happy face, which is incredibly fitting for this character. But there's so much more animation and emotion out of this character to get, so let's change it for something different. Just imagine your sister wants some additional snacks and you deny her, and thus she begins to cry. This is the face that Umaru would make if you denied her some additional cola. After all, midnight cola is the best. But if you decided to grant her wish and get her that cola, she would be even more joyful than she was in that standard face that came when we took her out of the box. And this one is incredibly sweet. But what if in order to get that cola, she had to bribe you by saying that if you didn't get it for her, she would tell your crush that you liked them or something? This is probably the kind of smug face she would make in holding your secrets hostage. But she would have had to have figured out that you had that crush to begin with, and this would probably be something like the face she made once she realized she had some evidence to use against you. Rather surprised and rather excited. And these are all great faces. All of them are so full of expression, and I really do love that about this figure. A lot of times, the figures come with faces that are just a little bit different from one another, and they're all rather similar, which is a problem I have. If you're going to include additional faces, they shouldn't just be sort of different from one another. They should be vastly different from each other, so that it feels like you get a broad variety of different faces that you can use. That makes the figure so much more fun, and for that, I love this, because this comes with not 1, not 3, but 5 faces in total, which is pretty darn good for a Nendoroid that was only $40. But now that we've taken a look at the faces, let's take a look at some of the other accessories. And like I said, she mostly comes with a bunch of food. But that's fine, because Umaru is famous for her obsessive snacking. The first and potentially most important snack accessory that she comes with is this tiny little bottle of cola, of course. It's a fine little representation of a cola bottle. It even has a small peg hole in it so it can be plugged into her hand. And funny enough, this actually comes without the sticker on it at first. They actually give you 2 different cola labels, which are actually the same label, but you get 2 separate ones, which is nice. So if one gets messed up, or if you screw up putting it on, or if over time one gets worn away, you can additionally add the other one on. Another funny thing about this, which really sealed the deal for me, and I only just now realized it, is that you can actually take off the cap. Yeah. That's it. As simple as it is, such a tiny little accessory being able to have such a smaller piece removed from it really does make this seem like there was a lot of love put into even something as small as this tiny little accessory. Next up is this little bag of kezutara, which essentially is some sort of cheesy appetizer, maybe like mozzarella sticks or cheese sticks of some sort, I'm not quite sure. She additionally comes with this adorable little plastic pudding cup, complete with a top that is not removable, unfortunately, and there is some additional Japanese lettering on there. I think that says puchiri something. I don't quite know, but it's pudding, obviously. And here's an adorable little box of what is actually called take no kono yama, which essentially comes out to bamboo shoot mountain when I put it into Google Translate. So I'm going to go ahead and trust that, because these are obviously supposed to be a representation of like the chocolate bamboo shoots that you can get made by like, I think Meiji or something. But basically the same company that does those little chocolate mushrooms does bamboo shoots as well. And she of course eats those in the show. And this one is incredibly hard to read, but I'm going to try Soha ikansaki, something like that. This is just a little bag of what I'm assuming are dried squid, something like that. It's a common snack in Japan, and she eats this additionally in the show. So another great little touch, and it's just a cute little plastic package. Completing our snack attack is potato chips, which of course is just a bag of potato chips, and these look great. There's even like a slight wrinkle in them. They're kind of like mushed basically, which is fine because it actually makes them look far more realistic. And yeah, that's the last snack, and these are all really well done. The text is incredibly small if you can't quite tell. The fact that these are smaller than my thumbnail here, and yeah, the fact that they have that kind of clarity on the text is amazing. Some of that text is incredibly small. Last but not least is this little PS Vita lookalike console. Of course, it's not quite called that, I'm sure, but you can see that there's a dual analog sticks, there's the 4-button setup on each side. It even has the little hooks in the corner like the PS Vita does. I think there's even a camera at the top. On the back here, you can see a tiny little dot where that would indicate a camera. And this is another incredibly small piece of accessory. And hilariously enough, it's still rather well detailed for something so tiny. And it's just another great little addition for her because it really does help bring the character home as some sort of otaku gamer nerd who just eats junk food all day. But that's not quite it, because there's even still something else. Boom! A little pair of legs which are attached to a funny little butt. And these actually plug in via these 2 pegs right here. Now, if you take Umaru's legs out, which is not terribly difficult, but be careful doing so because you could screw up the balls on the ball joints. It's not incredibly hard to do, but just be careful. Don't do it in too cold of temperatures because if the plastic is cold, it won't be malleable, and thus that will cause the likelihood of a break. So just be careful when you're doing this. Didn't want to risk it, so I did it very daintily off camera because, like I said, I don't want to break it just as much as I'm sure you don't want to break it. And then yeah, now that we have those 2 empty hollow peg holes there, we can just take the little clear plastic tabs here and they'll plug directly into that little body of hers. That's really way too funny. Kind of reminds me of Shin-chan. But yeah, that's adorable. Now that you've attached that, she can sit down or she could lay on her back with her feet kicked up in the air like, wah. I typically like to remove the heads for things like this because obviously it's a lot easier to manipulate the character. But now that you have her with her, but now that she's got her new legs or her new bottom half in, you can sit her down very easily. Or like I said, she could lay on her back. Now, in addition to all this, we're still not quite done because she even comes with an additional several set of arms and hands here, which is really nice. There's so much here that it really does amaze me this figure was so cheap and that they do them so differently now. She has this bent arm here that has an open hand, which could of course hold an accessory. She has 2 flat hands here, of which one you can see has a peg on it, which can be used to hold her cola. And of course you could always put that hand on another arm, such as potentially one of these bent arms here that aren't quite fully bent. And those are meant to, I believe, hold her little game station because they are curled in a little bit more and the one is open enough with a flat gap in there for her to hold something. Finally, she has a pair of crossed arms as well, which of course could go with her smug face so she could do a bit of a foo foo foo. And yeah, that's all of the accessories, and goodness, this is taking a lot longer than I expected. But of course the party does not stop there because as I said in the beginning, we would also be reviewing an additional thing here for this figure. This is the Face Swap Himouto Umaru Chan set. Now this is gonna hurt my soul a little bit because these faces, brand new, are worth quite a pretty penny, but I'm an idiot and I do this for you, so let's go. And inside we have the 6 additional faces, all in individual boxes. And they appear to be blind boxes, none of them having any indication of what face you are getting here, and these are all their own same box, so it's not like they indicate which face is which. So, they're blind boxes, and you just kind of have to roll the dice here, but I'm assuming a case would assure that you get all 6 faces, if not that would just be annoying. But, let's try our luck and open this first one. Wait, I'm just going to open them all. What am I talking about? Now, each package comes with the face, an additional neck joint, as well as some paperwork instructing you, I guess, how to put the face on, all packaged together very neatly in this plastic bag, and everything is wrapped in bubble wrap. So, well protected, well packaged, and yeah, everything here is great. She even has another neck joint right there in the head already, so you get quite a bit for the money you spend. We begin the face swap with this rather amusing, cocky sort of grin. Some might call it a shiitake mushroom eating grin. She also comes with this hilarious sort of 3-shaped mouth. This face is more of an I don't know what you're talking about style face, or maybe a not paying attention sort of face. Almost kind of looks like Kitaro for a moment. This one is pretty hilarious, a bit more embarrassed with the cheeks puffed up and the eyes on little tiny dots. I like this one a lot. A bit more bashful and embarrassed. Maybe she got scolded, or who knows, maybe she has gas. This one is amazing, just perfect. Beady little eyes, giant grin. This is a shiitake mushroom eating grin. So smug, so full of herself, even with the little blushing cheeks, it all works so well here. Now we go from flustered to furiously upset. This one is a crying face, of course, with the wiggly rimmed mouth and, of course, beaded up tears that are actually physically attached to the faceplate there. Even the eyes are wiggled up like everything is just going so wrong and she's so sad that she's ready to cry. And finally, this face could be seen maybe 2 different ways. Right now, she just sort of looks like she's in awe of maybe a delicious treat, complete with a bead of drool at the corner of her mouth. This works really well in that way. Or we can tilt the figure over on its back and make it look like this. And now she's in dreamland, and that's perfect. With the attached snot bubble here, that actually really adds a little bit more character. And this attaches in a very interesting way in the fact that it goes underneath her hair bangs here, and it all keeps itself attached to her rather well. So then, let's bring it all home. Because this figure, complete with the face swap kit, comes with a total of 11 faces, which to me is just absolutely amazing. This figure has no shortage of accessories, which is wonderful because though it does have limited posability, it still has so much capability in how you can actually present it. Now, posability isn't everything because, like I said, being able to present it so many different ways makes up for the fact that you can't really manipulate its arms. This figure is wonderful. I've got to say it blows away some of the current Nendoroid figures that have come out in more recent times. I'm more satisfied going back and revisiting this figure than I have been with many figures I've bought even recently. Of course, I love the character because I did really enjoy Umaru as a show, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this thing includes a lot for you to use. It really encourages you to play with it and have fun and really just get creative with the way you want to pose it. Having multiple styles of arms and of course those many different faces really allow for just a plethora of different presentation methods. And to be honest, you could probably use a lot of the faces that she comes with on other Nendoroids even. Her additional accessories such as the food and the cola, all of that could also probably be swapped with other figures as well, so this is definitely a great figure to have if you are collecting Nendoroids. And when you really consider everything, I think this figure truly does deserve a high score. That is why I am going to give the Umaru Chan Nendoroid a very strong 8 out of 10. The issues that I have with it are the inability to pose it in certain ways. That can be a bit of a problem, and it doesn't get a pass just because it has so many different accessories, but I will say that those accessories help alleviate any issue that I have with that posability. That kind of contradicts itself, but I guess it's really more so about the fact that having all those accessories really does allow you to do different stuff with it, but I still think that there's no excuse to not make it more posable. Still, I think they did everything that they could with the form factor and the style of character that they were given, and for that I am immensely grateful. But what do you think? Is this figure awesome? Do you think that the additional face swap parts are really worth buying? Why don't you drop a comment below and let me know. Make sure to like the video if you liked it as well. I'll remind you, this figure is from February 2016, so this is pretty old, and I've got to say, it really does hold up well even now in 2020. I'm going to link something on screen, so please click it if you want to. That'll help the channel, even if you have seen it. And with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching, have an amazing weekend, and keep on collecting.